answer a question that I've been asking myself for a while. That is, why is it that the 205 GTI gets all the love from everyone, from journalists to collectors? Why? And what happened to the 405 Mi16? Why don't people talk about it? If you go onto YouTube, you try to search for video reviews of this car, the 405, you won't find much. But people love and talk about the 205 all the time. Chris Harris himself has, I think, 2 or 3 205s. But perhaps the 405 deserves more love? Or maybe does the 205 just is that much better than the 405? Maybe all that attention is justified. Maybe the 405 is actually really good and people are missing out. So I want to answer that question. And the way I plan to do it is by not driving the 205 for a week. Only driving the 405 and then hopping back into the 205, because I feel like that first impression after hopping back into the 205 will help really capture the essence of what the true difference between these two cars are. And maybe I will be able to answer my own question. So let's see how it goes. But back to the 405, I've been dailying it for a week, and there are things I like about it, and there are things that I don't like so much about it as well. What I like, I probably already discussed it in my first video. That is the turn-in. Ooh, the turn-in is so good. It's like the Evo. I love the turn-in of this car. I mean, first of all, let's just talk about the steering, right? It's so light. It's very light. I remember the 205 probably has a heavier steering than this. This car feels very light on its feet. It feels like it's almost tiptoeing at all times. It doesn't feel unstable. It's very light. It's very easy to drive. It's very good daily. But this turn-in is superb. If you get to drive on some tight twisties, this car just comes alive. The thing I don't like about this car, I think the brakes are not that great. It's a bit mushy. Now it could just be this particular car. Maybe it needs new brake fluids or something. Or maybe not. I don't know. But definitely on this particular car, the brakes can be better. The engine, I like it, but I also don't like it. So what it does well is also kind of its weakness. So it has a lot of character from 4,000 up. It comes alive. The whole thing buzzes like a swarm of bees. But below 4,000, it's just, I don't know, it's lacking character. Look, nothing. And then before 4,000, it starts to come alive. Yeah, nothing. And then it starts, I know some people like that, but me personally, I like a chunky, flat torque curve on my engines. Maybe it's a bit lazy. Maybe it's for lazy drivers. But it's my preference. The other thing I don't like about this engine is the throttle. I feel like it's not so linear, not so progressive. For example, the last 10% of the throttle makes no difference. 100% and I want to speed up, so I put it down further, but I get nothing back, that actually makes the car feel slower than what it feels. So that's the other thing I don't like about it. But I can condition myself to get used to it. So it's not a deal breaker for me. The shifter is pretty damn good. But as I mentioned in my first video, 205 is better. This feels just a tad bit too notchy. And also, I don't like the position of the fourth gear. I feel like fourth gear should be a bit further back. I know it's strange. I actually like long gear shifts. I don't like short shifts. I'm not a race car driver. I just enjoy the feeling of driving. But as a daily, this car is just perfect. The seats, so comfortable. Driving it for the whole week, no body aches at all, no complaints. I can drive this all day. It's got the right amount of support. Perhaps it needs to be a bit more supportive on the sides, because this car is so good at corners. I find myself having to use my right arm to brace myself against the door when I go into corners. And so I'm having to use a lot of my core muscles, where if the seats are a bit more supportive, I probably don't need to do that. So I'm very interested to find out what it will be like to hop back into the 205 after a week of driving the 405. I'm sure it will surprise me on many fronts. So yeah, when we come back later, we'll find out. There she is. Little 205. Okay. When you join me later, I'll be in the 205. Okay, now we're in the 205. Let's see. Immediately, this engine feels a lot more ancient than the Mi16. Nowhere as refined. But it's so eager, very responsive. It's ready to go. And the steering is heavier. Strange. Feels much heavier than the 405. 405 you can kind of steer with fingertips. This you almost have to grab it. Okay, much more eager, this engine. It revs so much easier. Let's turn the fan down. Seating position is not too different from the 405. You still sit very high up, upright. But this car feels significantly smaller. Better steering feel. But you don't feel the vibrations coming to the steering wheel like the 405. Oh, okay. This car is ready to go. Gears are so much shorter on this car. often than the 405. You don't have to rev this engine out. This single overhead cam. It does most of its work around 4,000, 4 to 5,000. You don't need to ring it out to 6,000 or more. Plenty of torque down low. Very usable. Nowhere as refined as the 405 though. You can hear it's making all kinds of noises. Shifting is so much better on this car. Yeah. The turn in on the 405 is more direct, but this car changes direction faster, more eager, maybe because of the short wheelbase. That initial turn in, the 405 is better. On a tight corner, I think the 205 is the winner. Such a sweet little car. It's so eager. It's like, come on, let's go. It's like, come on, the whole time. In terms of power, they feel about the same. But where the 405 comes alive at 4,000, the 205's, it feels pretty much the same from like 3,000 to 5,000. The damping on this is so much better though. Yes. You're not encouraged to use all the revs. You don't need to. Rev matching is a joy. So easy to drive. Because you have to shift so often, it helps that the shifter on this is freaking spot on, man. It's so good. I love the shape of the shifter too. It's like a little, like a Lego foot. I don't know how to call it. Like a teddy bear's foot. Yeah, it's like a teddy bear's foot. This thing is eager. This thing wants to go. Rev matching is so much better on this. When you blip the engine, it's so fruity. It just goes and it doesn't really rev hang. I actually prefer the heavier steering on this car. friend who drove this car the first time, first thing he said when he came out, dude, your headrest is so nice. It's amazing. I was like, what the hell? Is that seriously the first thing you have to say about the 205 GTI? The headrests? Seriously? But he's not wrong. It is amazing. At 2.5, there's nothing flooring it. But maybe because this car is lighter, you don't feel like it's lacking power. On the 405, I feel like it's lacking power, but on this car, I don't get that feeling. Maybe it's the throttle mapping as well. On this car, it's very progressive. I love downshifting. It's just perfect, so easy. Now, if I go back and ask myself the same question, I can understand why the 205 gets all the love and why the 405 sort of has been forgotten. I can understand. Maybe it's because of the Honda Civic. Honda Civic sort of is a better 405 Mi16. But nothing is a better 205 GTI. Nothing so far. This car is raw. It's definitely more raw than the 405. It's chuckable. It's fun. It's modern enough to not be a nuisance. I drive my Alpha GTV and then I hop into this car, and this car doesn't feel less raw than that. Just as fun. It's just so good. Shifting is so much fun. Steering weight is beautiful. Brakes are better. Not as mushy as the 405. Lovely. It also has this kind of free play in the middle. That's typical of cars from the 90s. Down low. Helps if you turn the AC off. Thank you. Oh, now that the AC is off, comes alive. Yep, I have concluded. The answer to my question is yes, the 205 really does deserve to be in its legendary status. But the 405 should not be forgotten, because that's also a really good car if you're looking for a daily. 205 might be a little bit too raw for people to daily, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. The 405 manages to balance comfort and fun. But as we know, cars that compromise things for comfort are usually lucky to have both in here with me, even though the 405 is not mine. Thank you for watching. That's it.